Welcome. Thought I'd stop here beside my favorite stump. I'm Michael Livornia, editor of AudioStream. AudioStream is a sister site to Stereophile, Analog Planet, and Inner Fidelity, and our focus is computer audio, or I prefer file-based playback. Simply because imagine saying turntable audio for analog. It really doesn't make sense. So computer audio doesn't make sense either. So our focus is getting the best from file-based playback. So this is the barn. Welcome. It's where all the seriously fun listening happens. And the inside of the barn is roughly 35 by 40 by 12. And then I've cordoned off the listening area with things I love. And that to me is really as essential as the hi-fi, really, is filling this place where I spend so much time, filling it with things I love and that make me comfortable, that are familiar yet mysterious. I like a lot of mystery in everything I do. And so you can see books. They're actually organized alphabetically and by subject. So the majority are literature, ending with Yeats here. On this row are books about music, then philosophy and oversized art books. I studied art in college, which not Art Dudley. I think maybe we're going to take a closer look at some objects in just a minute. But welcome. So, but of all the things, there are lots of things here in the barn. I thought I'd pick two to highlight, one old and one new. The old is here, and this is a musical quote that was written to me by the composer George Crumb. He used to teach at the University of Pennsylvania. I wrote him a letter, and he responded with that, and that was in 1991. So that's been around for a while. And then this just arrived last week, and it's a rubber head with a zipper in the back that was used to cover an armature for a dummy head for dental students. The armature is really fascinating looking, but I settled on the rubber head. And then obviously records, more records, and more stuff. So here we are at the front wall, or the back wall, depending on your point of view. I like to call it the wall behind the speakers. And these are paintings of mine that I did in the 80s. And this is an Eames leg brace that was produced in the 1940s, contract for the Navy. And it really got the company kind of off to a start financially. And I've owned this since the 80s when I lived in New York. So it's been following me around for a while. So this is the network side of the hi-fi, and kind of for me the less interesting side. I worked in IT for 18 years roughly, and those were not the most interesting times of my life, believe it or not. So up at the top we have a router. This is the Sonic Transporter, which is a Linux server that houses Roon, and that's all it does. This is the NAS, a Synology NAS, the 412 Plus. It's a 4-bay NAS. It's got all my music on it. This is a USB drive, backup for all the music. It was designed by Philip Stark. Ooh, it's nice, isn't it? And then the last piece, before we get to the hi-fi, is a TP-Link fiber media converter that takes Ethernet in and sends fiber out. So it effectively isolates the hi-fi from any electrical noise made by all this cheap crap in terms of hi-fi vocabulary, cheap crap. And so then we'll come over to the hi-fi. So here we are at the hi-fi proper. The Ethernet cable from the network side comes into the DCS network bridge. The DCS network bridge is a Roon endpoint. And so Ethernet in and AES out to the total DAC. This is the D16. And just to clarify, everything on here are things I own. I'm not borrowing them for a lifetime. I own them. The total DAC, that goes balanced out into the Air AX520 integrated amp. And off to the side, and by no means take that in any other way than its position on the rack, is a well-tempered Amadeus turntable. The cartridge is a Denon 103, and that goes down to a Auditorium 23 step-up transformer and into a Sugden phono stage, and then back into the Air. Some people like to argue about digital versus analog, and those people are really silly because it's all about what you want to listen to, and not everything is available on everything. And I grew up with records. I like records. If you don't like records because they pop and skip, you're making mistakes somewhere along the line. And now we've worked our way around to my speakers, which are the DeVore Fidelity Gibbon 10s. 10s like this when you see it in print. And the red chair is made by Eames, the same people who made the leg brace. And this chair also dates from the 1940s. This is a modern reproduction. I used to have 3 very old versions, which I sold when I left New York. You can see this teardrop. Can you see it? But so that's my system. And I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoy it every day. So here's where I work when I write. The speakers are Adam A3X. They're active speakers. The DAC is the Mytek Brooklyn, and I run Roon on the desktop. So USB out to the Brooklyn, and then XLRs into the A3X. The phone, which I'll present, is a vintage Bang & Olufsen phone, and it's the best sounding phone you can get. Now that I own 2, I don't mind talking about it. And that's my desktop. I don't know, in frame, there's a hammer on the right side. That hammer was my grandfather's. He was a carpenter, and I keep it there because John Atkinson comes over once a week and beats me with it if I'm not producing enough content. And that's the desktop. So my couch is here because what I really do most days is I come in here around 6 in the morning. I lay right here and I sleep till about noon. Kidding. So I thought I would talk about reviewing and my philosophy of reviewing. And my philosophy of reviewing is very straightforward, and that is listen over time. I know some reviewers I've spoken to say they can kind of get a good take on a component very quickly, and I can't. I don't function that way. And I think this goes back to my art school days, in that when people would bring in their work and hang it for us to talk about, to critique it, There were some people in the class who would start talking almost immediately as soon as that student hung their work on the wall. And all they were doing was talking about themselves and not about the work, because anyone's work, and I think that I like that word, work. Anyone's work takes time for us to understand it. And I think we owe it to the person who's made that work, whether it be a painting, a book, a movie, or a piece of hi-fi equipment, to allow it time for us to get to know it, instead of us imposing our views upon it. Oh, this isn't doing this, this isn't doing that, rather than what is this doing? So I like to spend real time with all the equipment I review before making any kind of serious judgments about it. It's almost like a getting to know you period, a date. That's really kind of creepy, isn't it? But nonetheless, listening over time is important. I've, for myself in the past, there were a pair of speakers I was interested in, and I took really almost a year and a half before I made the purchase. I got to know owners of those speakers so I could hear them in their homes. And it worked out really well because I got to know those speakers much better by giving myself time to hear them. So I guess the other thing I'd like to say is listening to music on the hi-fi is in no way a painful experience. And if you find yourself in pain because of this hobby, I would suggest picking up a new hobby that you can enjoy, because this is all about enjoyment of music. And that is, again, I like to keep things simple. So enjoyment, time, listening, it's all very straightforward. So thank you for listening to me talk about reviewing. I hope you enjoyed it. Now we're in the music section of the barn, and the reason why I like to have a lot of instruments around is twofold. I play guitar, and I like to have real instruments to hear them. It's a good reminder. And when friends come over, I make them everyone play an instrument. This is one of my magical instruments. It plays on its own. It's a real farfisa. I've always wanted a farfisa ever since I heard Tom Waits' Rain Dogs. There's a track on there where he plays farfisa, and I had no idea what it was, and it actually said in the album liner notes, something us digital people don't really remember. Album liner notes were really good, written information about what you were out listening to. The reason why I love the farfisa is it does this. I do this for hours and hours. That's it, just that. I haven't touched any of the keys yet. I'll get there eventually. It's scary, isn't it? So, and this thing, I have no idea what this is. It's too heavy for me to get out of here. So I hang headphones on it in laundry. It's really ugly and big and heavy. Thank you. Hi, I'm Art Dudley.
Hi, I'm Art Dudley. Hi, I'm Art Dudley.
Do over.